I want to welcome you all to come out for this program today. This is the first of what I hope will be many programs. It's a brand new program. We're calling it, for lack of anything, for a better name, we're calling it an interview forum. Our idea is that it's important that we record interviews with a lot of important people or notable people or people who have stories to tell. And so this is the first of what I hope will be many. The process today is that I'm going to ask Gilmer a number of questions, and then at the end of the program you will have a chance to be the interviewer to ask any questions that you have of Gilmer. The idea is that we're going to hear Gilmer's stories, his experiences. We'll gain insights into parts of his life or his expertise. And then at the end of this program, we will put a recording of this interview into our archives at the museum. I think that's the really important part. We're going to be keeping a good record of this. As I say, we hope this is the first of many. The program is being filmed today by two students from Lindsay Hunt's multimedia class. Let me introduce them. We have Maggie Blankenship. And over on this side, we have Michelle Pierce. They are filming and they will edit this all into a video. By the way, the planning committee for this was authorized and approved by the Tillman County Historical Society Board. The planning committee, along with myself, has been Nina Northcutt and Gary Tyler. And I told Gilmer that as I ask these questions, I encourage him to expand on them, to elaborate, to tell stories, whatever, in ways that will make these answers interesting to all of us and to be a good record. When we talked about doing this, we immediately came on Gilmer's name. We thought he would be a great choice to do this for the first time. For several reasons. First of all, he's well known and he's well liked. Can you think of anybody in the community who's liked better than Gilmer Cass? And also the fact that he grew up in this area, he knows this area well, and he knows all of us well because he represented us for so many years as a state senator. 36 years. Wow. Gilmer, thanks for being here today. Okay, first, an easy question. Where were you born and when?
I was born January the 1st, 1932. What did I say? January the 18th, 1932. At least I got the year right. And I was born, how many of you know where Lang's community is? It's about 4 miles west of Manitou. And then back about 4 miles, that's where the farm was. Lang was back about two miles north. But we was living in a rented house. I say we. The home place was north of Otter Creek. And Mother and Daddy rented a little house about 2 miles south, up close to the Kellys. And Dr. Childers from Tipton delivered me at home, and many of you will remember Jess Barnes and Lucille. Lucille always said she gave me my first bath, but Bud and I were roommates at Stillwater at the college, and so yes, I was born at Lane, and we traded at Tipton and Snyder.
Gilmer, tell us about your parents. Who were they and what were they like?
I was lucky to have good parents. People ask me, so what's the first thing you want to do if you're going to run for politics? And I always say, pick some good parents. Pick some top parents. But my mother, which many of you knew, she was a politician in our family. She made every meeting, was a member of the Historical Society here. Many people ask me, when you get to be her age, and she was about 70 at that time, don't you think you could, would you hope you could go like that? I said, I wish I could go like that now. But she was busy and probably was a politician in our family. My daddy was real quiet, a little shy, but he was real good with machinery and could repair and keep anything going. I've seen him take a piece of baling wire and make a spring out of it, and it would work as good as a new one. But I was fortunate to have good parents, and so, and then I've got some nice kids. I have my daughter is here, and her daughter, which is my granddaughter, and they surprised me. Sure, I think I know who told you about it.
Glad she did.
And I could give her this microphone. She belongs to the largest Rotary Club in the world, in Oklahoma City. And she gave a program to them a few weeks ago. How many was there? 5,000?
Probably 200 or 300.
But we're very
But
proud of
Daddy
her.
will always make it exaggerated.
And my son, which many of you know, has my first name, and we named him Gilmer John. In fact, he was named after two grandparents, John Miller, which was my former wife's father, and my dad, he was Gilmer. He was really J. Gilmer, but people called him Gilmer, and that's the reason. If you talk to people from Lang, they still call me Gilmer Neely, because my middle name is Neely after my mother's maiden name. So I always like to tell that.
Gilmer, you grew up on the farm out by Otter Creek. What are your earliest memories from the farm? What are your earliest memories from the farm?
Well, I can tell you a number of things. But Daddy was mostly a cattleman, and raised. The Caps were known for their black Angus cattle and red, and they used to call them Duroc jerseys. Now they just call them Duroc hogs, the red ones. But I mean, we had red hogs all over that creek up there. And any time a black animal got out, they knew to call the Caps. But that's not true now. But it was at that time. I didn't care much about the hogs, so I got out of hog business and just raised the cattle. But those are things I remember. Yes, I showed a black steer during the FFA time. Mike and I was talking about that a while ago. And Cindy, I believe you're the one that had the calf. And it didn't lead too well. But if she goes pulling on it, and I remember this at Hobart or Snyder won, that calf would pull back and then fall over. And some of her little classmates, well, what happened? He's dead, he's dead.
Gilmer, you went to school at Lane Consolidated No. 1, right? What was life like there as a student?
Okay, so mother taught school in a number of different schools, but when I got ready to start the school, she was teaching at Lang. And so my first 2 years in school they were at Lang. At that time, Lang School was a 2-story building. Virginia, you remember that? And I was telling somebody the other day, and they couldn't believe it. We had outhouses for the school. and they were at the north end of the football field. So I guess the participant of the football could go to those restrooms. But some of the older boys they would try to threaten the younger ones, wouldn't let us go to the restroom. I don't know if that's why I have bladder trouble now or not. And then they built the new school, and Mother took a job at Snyder, and we moved into Snyder, and I started the 3rd grade at Snyder, and went through school at Snyder.
How would you say that school was different in those days than it is today?
I don't know but what the students got more good out of school back in those days than they do now. It seemed like teachers were real strict and you had to study. Now it seems like, and I've grown up with teachers in their family, but it seems like they're almost babysitters now. And I hope I'd love for people to go respecting teachers again and pay them a decent salary. How can we pay the Thunder players for $12 million a year and the teachers such a small amount? But it's just going to take a change in people to have respect for teachers.
Gilmer, these people want me to ask you. Did you ever get in trouble when you were a kid? And what's the worst thing you ever did?
I tell this many times. What?
Tell them about the cat at OSU.
The what?
Dying the cat.
I knew you shouldn't have been here. I'll tell this one first. What was it? Well, you got me on that, but when we were freshmen at OSU, I guess the juniors, Bud Barnes went to Cameron 2 years and then went to OSU. So he was ahead of me by 2 years at Stillwater, but we roomed together in a basement apartment. And we ran onto a little cat, just a stray cat. And we took it in, and this apartment had a trap door that go under the house. But we'd let that cat out that door to go under the house to use the restroom. And the landlady that owned the house, she was Russian and had trouble understanding her. But she asked her, "Do y'all have a cot? Do you have a cot?" And what she was talking about was this cat. But this was just a regular gray cat. So we thought, well, we want a cat different. So we tried to dye that cat. First of all, we bleached it. And it didn't turn out. In fact, we named her Varicose for varicose veins. But she was about that color. Now, Cindy, don't you ask any more of those. What?
Mrs. Rippey.
Okay, so you asked when I got in trouble.
Yes.
My first year. I had Mrs. Rippey as my first grade teacher. And I see some of you, because she taught here at Frederick later. But they had us sit in a little chair in a circle. And you sat here, you sat there. Well, I got up and moved back over to another chair. Well, this is where Suzanne Earl was sitting. Cute little girl, but I moved over to sit by her. And the teacher grabbed me up and gave me one spank. But this is the superintendent's daughter. And I thought, well, I was doing my politics at that time.
Who were some of the teachers who made the biggest impression on you? And how did they influence you?
Well, keep in mind, I've only had two. That was at Lang, the Mrs. Rippey. And I had, I believe it was named Kent or Kemp. They lived right east of Lang, was where the father lived, the first house. But she taught me second grade, so I didn't have many teachers at Lang. Now I went on to Snyder, could name some there. I'll say this, the teachers who were most strict was the one that I still respect. Somebody from Snyder would remember Fanny Treagle. And she was pretty good size, but she became our principal. When she came down that hall, man, you knew she was coming down that hall. But she was a good teacher, but the ones who were strict, I'm trying to think, they were, Dan, you might help me on some of this. Miss Etheridge, you remember the Etheridge?
Yes, I do.
Boy, she was strict. And one of my classmates was Jimmy Don Hartgraves. And Jimmy Don had long black hair and kept it greasy as could be. And when Miss Etheridge started back, she'd pull his hair. And then she'd ask for his handkerchief. So he got ahead of her when he saw her coming. He just got his handkerchief out and had it ready, but she was a good teacher. I think that's where surely you fuss at my handwriting, but I think she was the one that caused the trouble. She expected us to write everything that she said as notes. And Shirley still teased me about my handwriting. I wished I'd have got my mother's handwriting instead of my father's.
Gilmer, you lived near Tipton when you were growing up. What are your memories of Tipton from those days?
I'm gonna find out right quick how many people know Tipton. How many of you know where Snuff Street is? Snuff Street. My gosh, you're not from Tipton. Mike?
Go away and you take it.
That's right. That's right. Isn't that good?
My grandparents lived there on the other side.
That's right. What about Shady Lane?
I know where it's at.
Oh, you passed. You did all right. Let me see what else about Tipton. They used to have a drawing every Saturday. And I mean, everybody would go to town. Double park everywhere. And they'd call up a student to draw the name out of the hat or basket, whatever. And they gave that person, what, $1 bill to do the drawing.
The person that won got the dollar. Person that won the $25 got the dollar. They gave the dollar to the kid.
So the person that received the money
Yes.
gave the dollar to the student. They should have.
You also grew up in Snyder. What are your memories of Snyder?
Oh, this will take all night. Well, I enjoyed my school in Snyder. Of course, everybody in the area knew about the cyclone. And it seemed like it was one that talks all the time. And of course, I went in after the cyclone. I remember my senior class, we only had 28 But I played in the band, and I enjoyed it. I started off with a trumpet, and there were so many people that played trumpet, I switched to a baritone. And what's so funny about this, Shirley, my wife, she played the cornet in the Tipton band,
And Frederick too.
and Frederick both. You know, I didn't know Shirley till a few years back, but she was born in Tipton. She worked in the drugstore just like I did when I was in high school. Something else we did the same. What was it?
That's all.
But she's known a lot of the same people. We have known a lot of the same people at Tipton. In fact, if we go trying to think of her name, one of us will get it. Well, what was her first name? Oh, yeah.
Gilmer, how many years were you married to Wanda? And how did you meet Wanda?
Wanda's mother was a school teacher and was teaching at Snyder, and they drove back and forth from Hedrick. And she was a class behind me, when I met her at school. One of the first times I saw her, she was at a basketball game with a date. And I thought, that's a pretty little gal. And so, yes, we started dating. And we were married 56 years. And we had 2 children. Cindy, which you met, lives in Oklahoma City now, and her daughter, my granddaughter. And then Gilmer John lives north of, well, up by the Elgin area. I think the address is Lawton, and he's in the real estate business. These 2 are both attorneys. I've got plenty of attorneys. You don't like attorneys till you need them.
Well, and of course, I want to point out, all of us love Shirley, and we're glad you brought him to Frederick to live. You have been a farmer and a rancher throughout your life. How did you choose that career?
I just guess I grew up with it. As I mentioned earlier, I like the cattle. And I can talk to you about what type of equipment we had. Now, you know, I'm just the right age to talk to some of these people because I didn't get in on the mules and horses. They quit using the mules. And my first remembrance of a tractor was an F-20 Farmall. And in fact, I tuned it up and used it to make my first crop. Now, I had a neighbor which was one of the Kirks, and they bought a M Farmall. Man, that thing would go down the road. I bet it was going 20 miles an hour. But I thought, my goodness. But I've seen us go from 2-row planters to 4-row planters. And Jerry, what they have now, 6 or 8? 12 rows. And used to, it was hard to make a straight row. But now with all the GPS, I'm amazed at seeing the cotton fields. The rows are just so straight. Doug, how many rows is your planter?
16.
Look at that. First guy doesn't have a chance. Well, I know you still have to match rows, don't you? If you planted if you had a 2-row, you sure had to be on match rows. I'm going to tell about my cotton picker. I bet I had the first mechanical picker in this area. A one row. And it mounted on the back of my 70 John Deere, and you got up here on top to drive it. You didn't use the seat down below, because that's just when you move down the road. But the funny thing about it, me and two of my friends, we took our pickers to South Texas. And coming back, we didn't want to take that one row picker apart, so we got one of our hands to just drive it home. Now keep in mind, this was on a 70 John Deere propane. And they kept messing with the carburetor when they said that it sounded like a 4-cylinder instead of a 2-cylinder. But there was a hitchhiker, and he wanted to ride. So the hired hand driving there, and she told him he could ride, he'd have to ride up here. Now this was a seat that was facing backwards. And cars would go by, and they'd see him, they thought he was driving backwards. But I don't remember how many hours he took to get that thing home. Yes, I had to overhaul that tractor after that.
Gilmer, you know, I used to work for Southwest Rural Electric, so I know you and I have talked a lot in the past, and I used to talk a lot about the history of rural electricity because it changed life on the farm. What changes do you remember? First of all, can you remember when electricity came to the farm, and what changes did it bring?
My grandparents was pretty progressive, and on the farm they had what we call a generator down in the basement. They called it a Delco Remy. In fact, it's still down there. But they had the house all wired for electricity, had wire going down to the barn. And those of you who've been by the farm, my daddy designed that barn, 170 foot long. But it was built for hogs. But they had electricity going to the barn and to the house. So I don't think I ever remember not having electricity. Now, was it about 37 when the REA went up through there?
It would have been a few years later when they actually got it wired. Probably 39 or 40.
But they had Daddy did a lot of custom work, and I'll tell about that some. But they built silos out of concrete, and I think you still see some by Charlie Stern's place. And with that same design, they built, looked like about three-fourths of a silo, and used it for a water tank for the farm. So the windmill was there, pumped water into the silo, and it was tied to the house and to the barn and to one water tank for the cattle north of the house. But those are some things I remember.
Gilmer, why did you want to run for the state senate?
I served as the president of the chamber at Snyder, and I enjoyed working with people and helping them. And our present state senator was retiring. And I had some friends, in fact, both of my friends, asked me to run. And so Byron Dacus was our senator, and he'd been in for a number of years. And so I took it, and it was a close race. I was new in politics. My family just worked at it and went with me. Wanda didn't know if she was going to go door to door or not. But my opponent from Cordell, one of my opponents, his wife, in fact, they were from Snyder, originally. But Wanda saw her campaigning up and down the street. She said, if she can do it, I can do it. So she became a good little campaigner. And we teased Cindy and Gilmer John, you was going to run for what? County clerk or something? And then Gilmer John was going to, he was going to run for office. So we just made a family deal out of it. What else can I add to that?
Basically, you nowadays, they hire a lot of people. You ran that campaign just around our kitchen table.
Yeah, I think somebody had asked me, I think I spent $1,700 my first year. They wouldn't touch it now. And yes, it was all volunteers. And I'm glad I'm out of it.
You remember how close it was? The election?
Oh my goodness, I won't give you the exact figure. There was three of us in the Democratic primary. One of them was a retired county agent at Cordell. And the House member at that time, he decided to run for the Senate. Now, I had a Republican from Mountain View that came in later, but by the time we had a close race in that primary. I'm just going by what I think I remember. I think I won by 137 votes. And then we had a runoff, and it was even closer than that. But just barely squeaked through and got the Democratic nomination. And then the one from Mountain View was Pat Hancock. Pat and I, we believe so much alike that we took 3/4 of the votes in that race.
Was that always Senate District 26? And what were the areas that it covered?
When I ran for office, it had 4 counties: Cowboy, Warsaw, Harmon, and Greer. Now, we go through redistricting every 10 years. And so I was a freshman senator. So I just had to almost take what they gave me. And I ended up after the redistricting with 8 counties, going all the way from, now I didn't have Tillman County till in the 80s, but I went from Snyder all the way to Ellis County. Arnett had Roger Mill, had Cheyenne. I guess I'd like to maybe say this. Talking about things that I've done. I think one of the best things I ever got honored on was stopping the road from Bill. Did you hear me? Stopping the road. But up in Ellis County, I get Roger Mills and Ellis mixed up. And if you look at the map, you'll see why. But I had one of my main helpers in Roger Mills County said, Gilmer, where's that road? It was announced in the paper about this road, and it's just a few miles, and how expensive it was. What's going on? I said, well, let me check it out. I checked with the county commissioners, and they said, well, the previous commissioner had wanted that road, and he's out now. We don't care. So we got that road stopped, and they took that money and built the highway from Fargo south, and people were just happy to get that blacktop road. But this road that we stopped was going to some wealthy ranchers, and if I told you the name, you'd probably know them. In fact, one of them came in my office a month or two afterwards, I thought, uh-oh, I'm going to catch it. He said, well, you can't blame us for trying. I said, no.
Gilmer, during your 36 years in office, 36 years in office, it's hard to imagine today, isn't it, with term limits. During your 36 years in office, what issues stand out most in your mind, positive or negative?
I made a real good name for myself up in, now keep in mind, Washita County and Beckham County. See, Elk City was my biggest town. But there were a real active group of royalty owners. And they came to me and said, these oil companies are putting down one well and tie up 3,000 acres. And they couldn't lease any of that 3,000. And so Senate Bill 7 was the name of it. The reason I know that, these farmers and royalty owners, they lobbied the Capitol about what you're seeing with the teachers now. They came up here, but we got it passed. And they thought, well, we'll kill it over in the House. It passed the Senate pretty easy. And we'll kill it over in the House. Well, what they did, I don't remember who the speaker was, but instead of assigning it to oil and gas, he assigned it to the Agriculture Committee. Oh, they came unwound. Why did it go to agriculture? Well, most of those wells are drilled on agricultural land. But we were able to pass it, and the House author was a Buzz Bradshaw from up at Cheyenne. But we got it passed. But I got more recognition on that, and it brought in a lot more money for the state.
What would you say are your biggest accomplishments? If you list the things you accomplished during those years, what really stands out the most as accomplishments, things you were able to do?
Well, I just named that. Of course, people always like to see roads and highways. That's the most visible.
What about 1017?
Okay, that was a good one. Said we had trouble back in those early years of funding education. Legislators don't like to vote for tax increases. I think you know that. But you got to take care of things. And so under Henry Millman, he pushed what was known as House Bill 1017. And it was funding teachers, did a whole lot to help education. And it wasn't easy to get it passed. A lot of arm twisting was going on in both sides, both the Senate and the House. I saw grown men cry because they hated to vote for it, but they felt like they're going to have to help the school. But I can remember one or two. We were in a caucus meeting, so it wasn't out on the floor. But I saw one or two just cry because they said, well, we got to do something, and he'll probably get me defeated.
We need some of that now.
Yes, what's it?
1017 is a lot like the situation we're in right now with teachers coming to the Capitol and getting to the point of a walkout or work stoppage. Well, looking back, do you have any regrets? Things that you wanted to do and were not able to do when you were state senator?
Well, Joe, not right off. I was pretty fortunate. I got most everything I introduced passed. Sometimes the rules in the legislature, if you don't get the number of required votes, lobby the ones who didn't vote for it. But I can't recall any that I introduced that I didn't get passed. I guess that's a pretty good record. Somebody may correct me, I don't know.
Well, here's the big question. How were politics different in those days than they are today?
There was a lot of difference. We didn't have all the fuss between the D's and the R's. One of our best, now keep in mind, they do line up votes to make sure they get a bill passed. But we had a few Republicans that we knew they would join us because the Democrats were in lead at that time. And we could always talk to the Democrats. And I can't recall many times that we didn't have enough votes to get it passed. I could name one right now, and he's running for governor. But he always would help us out. In fact, he grew up in Canute. You'll know who I'm talking about now. His dad was a sheriff from that area, George Lamb.
Gilmer, what do you think have been the effects of term limits? You were able to serve 36 years, and the difference is back then we didn't have term limits. And we all remember when they were passed, and it's changed government. What do you think, good or bad? What do you think?
I think we're getting a taste of that now, because a lot of them, they don't have the memory of what happened. And so I think a lot of people thought it was just selfish in my part. But I said, we got term limits every 4 years. In the Senate, you run every 4 years. In the House, you run every 2 years. I said, well, you got term limits. Oh, we got to get those rascals out. And they named one or two that they really didn't like. And so Gene Stipe was one of them. In fact, they used to laugh about, he was a poster boy for term limits. But if you talk to his people in McAllister, they all loved him. And he'd go back in just very easily.
Now it's your turn. We have probably about 15 minutes left today. What questions do you have for Gilmer? Oh, come on. Well, Gilmer, I guess we've been pretty thorough.
I have one person that wrote it, said, can we ask anything we want to? He's not here. What would you do?
Gilmer, you haven't talked about Bird's Flat.
Okay, let's talk about it. That's one of the things I probably did. It didn't develop as fast as I would like for it to. But I had Bird's Flat in my district with a retired air base with a runways of over 2 miles long. The space industry was looking for somewhere to land these rocket planes. They looked at us and liked us. Part of our problem, we didn't have enough people to really, and you get caught with this at Frederick. We got an industry looking at Frederick, maybe. There's not enough people there to give us our labor. But we got a few things passed, and we made good friends with a man from Florida who helped Florida create their space authority. And he came up and helped us and drafted a bill for us. So we are licensed for spaceport at Bird's Flat. And we got the corridor, got the area laid off that they can go over top. And we've had a number of people looking at us. You've been reading about X-Space. They talked to us. I thought they may be coming at one time. But if you look, recently they're beginning to look at us more. And so I think eventually you'll see some space industry launching out of bird flat.
You know, the idea of this actually going in our archives means that someone may be looking at this years from now after we're all gone. What do you want to be your legacy? How do you want to be remembered?
I heard this quote on George Knight, and I'd like to be remembered like this. You know, George Knight was noted as a good guy in a white hat. But there was a lawsuit because of the riot at McAllister. And in the court, I believe Judge Bohannon was the judge. And so George Knight was governor, so they called him in as a witness. And the attorney for the defendant said, no, the plaintiff said, you didn't swear in George Knight. And the judge said, Counselor, everybody knows that George Knight does not lie. Is there anything else, Counselor? But isn't that an honor to say he does not lie? And I like to think I have that reputation. If I've lied, it was by accident.
Anyone else? Any questions for Gilmer? Last call.
You want to talk about the Southern Legislative Conference?
Okay, some of the best times I had, I love to meet people. I never would have gotten politics if I didn't. But I became active in what we call the Southern Legislative Conference, made up of 16 states from here back southeast. Well, I went to that pretty regular. First thing you know, they asked me to run as the chairman. And yes, I was elected, but I went to every state capital in those 16 states, made good friends with a lot of people, which I still see some occasionally. But yes, I enjoy that. Yes, I got to take some pretty nice trips, sponsored by SLC, not these taxpayers. But I went to Taiwan and I went to Ireland, both of them sponsored by Southern Legislative Conference. Thank you, Senator. I tell you what, these younger brains can think of things when we came.
Anyone else?
Gilmer, when did your folks settle there on that farm?
Okay, the drawing was in El Reno. And I believe I read recently it was in '01, but my grandparents came from Illinois, Greenfield, not Springfield, Greenfield, Illinois. Somebody's nodding like I know where it is, but they came in about '06. My daddy was about 6, and my aunt was older than my daddy. Was that the question?
I think you had a question over here.
Gisela, Heidi.
Gilmer, I just want to say we admired you so much because you were not only our senator for several years, but you also was a Rotarian with my husband, who isn't here anymore. And you all built that Rotary Pavilion at the Tom Street Lake. And it's still used up today, and people are wanting to be there. And I know and I remember you all rolled those rocks and built a beautiful furnace to cook hamburgers on or whatever. And we are very proud of you being a Rotarian.
Thank you, Gisela. And I didn't pay her to stay there. Gisela had her husband Gunter sprayed my cotton. And in fact, you was just out of high school about the time you was there flagging. And then their son is a pilot now and still sprays.
Anyone else?
I used to work for a spray company, which wasn't there. It was American Dusting Company. And they had those big old biplanes. And I'd have people stop on the road while I was out flagging and just watch those planes. One goes, what do you have to pay to get to fly one of those? I remember you broke my fence post. You knew I was going to say that. I had a little electric fence around at the end of the cotton field, and it was just a little cedar post. And Gunner, we used to think you had to really get down low, and he hit that post with a strut and bit it. He apologized and apologized. And I said, well, I was afraid you hurt your plane.
Gilmer, I'm glad you brought up the term limit thing, because back when I was in office during that time, that was all they were talking about. You go out on the street and somebody'd have a board that I want you to sign this because we're getting term limits. And I said, we already have term limits. They said, no, we don't. And I said, every 4 years we have term limits. Well, yeah, but you just can't get them out like that. I said, well, if the people want them out, they'll vote them out. If they don't, they'll keep them in. And I never was for term limits, still not.
You know, people were nice to me when I first campaigned. I was new in politics, but they were also nice. I had one friend, and Dan, I know you know him if I told you, he ran for House seat. He told me they would throw his car down in front of him. Of course, he was the only Republican in that area. You know who I'm talking about.
I thought sure you'd have some stories to tell about him.
Well, we don't get started on that. Jack Myers and I was also roommates up at OSU. And he was the only Republican in that area. In fact, people used to walk across the street to keep from meeting a Republican. I said I wouldn't get in the politics part. But Jack Myers is the one that we used to tell jokes on. I remember one time he ran into where the county commissioner had dumped a load of gravel. He said, I thought it was just shadow of a tree. He ran right into them. But Dan and I started on him. He always fed cattle out of a truck and leave the door open. And one time he came back and there was a cow that was wedged in the cab of the truck.
Anyone else? Well, Gilmer, if there are no more questions, let me just say thank you for coming. Thank you for doing this, for being the first one. And thank all of you also for coming. There are some index cards over here by the door. You all may have picked one up when you came in, or they're there when you leave. If you have any impressions of this or any suggestions for how you might like to see this done differently, let us know. Because going into this, we said this is a totally different program, and we're going to feel our way through. We're going to find a format and probably explore some different ideas. So if you have ideas about things you'd like to see us do, or people you think would be good interview subjects for this kind of program, let us know. Put that on a card and leave it with us, and we will certainly look at that. We've said going into this that ideally we'd like to do maybe 4 of these this year. That would be like 1 each quarter, and we'll mix up the format and try to do some things that are a little different. But do share your ideas, your impressions. That would be valuable to us. The other thing that I would ask you to do, point out that these are there, we have our Historical Society membership forms over by the door. Each year we do a membership drive, and that will be beginning in the next week or so, running over the next month or so. But the membership forms are here today, and if you would take one of those, or you could leave it here today, or you could take it with you and send your membership back in. The Tillman County Historical Society really needs memberships. They're more critical than ever before because, as you all know, we used to be a state historical society museum. We got money from them for operations. Well, no more. Just like all the other things that have been cut from the state level, our funding from the State Historical Society has also been cut. So memberships are very, very important. So if you could provide us your membership, we would certainly appreciate that. The membership drive will conclude this year with our annual meeting. The annual meeting this year will be a dinner that will be held on April 21st. Also on the membership form is an opportunity to buy tickets for that dinner. They're $15 each. And the speaker this year at the annual meeting is going to be John Dyer, who is a noted historian and author. Some of you may be familiar with the book The Oklahomans that was printed last year. It's a big, comprehensive history book. He is the author of that book. So having him in Frederick is going to be a really neat thing. It's going to be a great program, and you all will want to attend. But anyway, do please take a membership form if you would with you. They will be mailed out if you're on the mailing list. You should get one in the next few days anyway, but please take one with you when you leave today. If there's nothing else, I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you, Gilmer. Thanks.